Welcome to part 2 of I, Vivaldi. When we finished, the maestro turned to my papa. Giovanni, you have a most talented son. Then and there, I made a vow that music would be my life. The years passed, and before long, I turned 15. One evening, Mama announced, Antonio, it is time to begin your studies for the priesthood. But I want to be a musician like Papa. I glanced at my brother. Perhaps Tommaso could become a priest instead. Papa sighed. No, it was you that she promised. You owe your life to that vow. I don't care. I made my own vow. Mama stood up. Antonio, you will become a priest. Then I will die. There was a breathless silence. Papa looked me in the eye. You will keep your mother's vow. He turned to Mama. But I understand the boy. Perhaps if he gave up the violin, he would die. Mama's eyes softened. Very well, Antonio, but your studies come first. So I began my studies, but they did not come first. Music did. I played the violin, composed music, and 3 more years passed. Why is it taking so long for you to become a priest? Mama asked. Mama, you know God never meant me to run. Do not mock me, Antonio. You may be a man, but I am still your mother. Finally, I was ordained, and people began calling me the Red Priest for the color of my hair. Red Violinist would be better. One day, I stepped beside a canal. I listened to the water lapping against the walls of houses and a nightingale singing from its cage. I watched gondoliers rowing by. The sounds and rhythm were like music. Ah, the Red Priest, a gondolier called from his boat. May I take you home? Yes, please. My head is filled with music, and I can write it down as we go. I stepped into his gondola, sat back, and began to turn the sounds and rhythms into musical notes. If only I could do nothing but make music. There was so little time. Even so, my fame as a violinist grew. Count Contarini invited me to his palace to perform some new music I had written. I closed my eyes and put all my longing into it. Suddenly, I heard a sigh. It was the Countess. She had swooned in delight. Once again, I vowed to make music my whole life. But how? Here, I must confess something that I never admitted in public. Once, during Mass, music came flooding into my head. I could not think of the words I was saying, and I could hardly breathe for the tightness in my chest. So I rushed out of the service to write down the notes before I forgot them. I dipped the quill in the inkwell, and the notes flew across the page. I could scarcely write fast enough, but now I could breathe again. When I was finished, I hurried back to the service. It was over, and there stood the bishop. How dare you leave during Mass, he hissed. The cardinal will hear about this. Then tell him, Your Excellency, that I do not wish to say Mass again. I wish to make music. The bishop stared at me as if I had gone mad. Indeed, I felt so gloriously mad that I turned and ran out of the church. The cardinal did hear about me. You have certainly behaved badly, Antonio, he said. Your Eminence, on bended knee, I most humbly beg your gracious self to pardon the sickly, mad creature that I am. Such is the way one must speak to cardinals. He studied me for a moment. It is true that you musicians are quite mad, and that being so, I shall grant your wish. Instead of saying Mass, You will teach violin to orphan girls. I bowed in thanks. Now, music could be my whole life. Not only did I teach violin, I also conducted the orchestra and wrote music for the poor, fortunate girls. Poor because most were abandoned. Fortunate because those who had a talent for music could study it. They had no last names, so each one was given the name of the instrument she played, such as Katerina of the viola or Bettina of the bassoon. How eager they were to play my music! At every rehearsal, they would ask for something new, so I composed more and more music for them. The girls inspired me to try a new kind of composition that makes musical pictures. I called it the Four Seasons. After we played the music together, for the first time, they all began talking at once. Maestro, said Bianca, I can hear birds singing in my violin. And I make the thunder rumble with my cello, Luciano said. And we make the dog bark, said Caterina of the viola. So it is fitting, I said, that I play the cuckoo. They all laughed. On Sundays and holidays, we gave concerts in the chapel. Strange as it may sound, those orphan girls became the finest musicians in Italy. People came from all over Europe to hear us and get a peek at the girls. Papa and Mama always came, and sometimes kings did too. Once King Frederick of Denmark attended our concert. The girls became quite nervous beforehand. Just play from your heart and it will touch his, I told them. We played a violin sonata, music I had composed especially for him. When we were finished, everyone waited for the king to respond. He began to cough and scrape his feet on the floor to show his pleasure, for applause was not permitted in the chapel. Some men in the audience blew their noses into lace handkerchiefs. Mama and other women tapped fans on the arms of their chairs. After the concert, Papa looked proud, and Mama was beaming. Antonio, you are not the kind of priest I thought you would be, she said, but you are surely making music for God.